I don't know that you and I have ever really like hung out
No,
outside, like,
no,
right?
we haven't.
But also, like what I was saying to you before is you're very aspirational. I don't know if that's the right word,
Okay.
but I really always want to be my best self. You're like literally of the sea of people
Yeah.
that I've gotten to work with on camera. Like you are my favorite. You are the one that I am most confident. Like if I'm in a scene with you,
Yeah.
like it's gonna be good, no matter how the writing is, no matter how mad I am, like this will always, you like never up. Like you're never dishonest. You're so smart. And like, I really like love being around you. As I was saying in there before, I was going to tell you this story. I think I'm always a little hesitant to let it like, I want you to know my best self because there's parts of me that like, I think I would, like I used to be a real dude and I would hate to do or say anything around you. Is that weird? It's a very sacred relationship for me.
That's
it's very precious
very
for me.
But it's fascinating because I relate to that deeply, deeply. And I don't think I have the same history, right? So, but when I think of
my history?
No,
no,
I don't have the same history.
Yeah.
But because of whatever overactive fear I have of people not liking me or whatever that is, when I think of people like yourself, like Charlie, like Vincent, like these people, Wilson, people that we work with that I so admire, I don't ever feel like I'm fully myself or sharing of myself because that little bit of fear holds me back. Mm-hmm. So again, we have such similarities, I think, but just from completely different reasons.
But you were saying how you're like nervous.
I'm very nervous.
And I imagine that's like astonishing because like, look, like most of the people that like come on this show, it's literally like the only time in their life they've ever been on camera, only time in their life they've ever, right? And I imagine they'd be surprised by you who like knows what the like you're at least seemingly so comfortable in front of the camera.
But that's the thing, right? Though, I mean, you can, whether this is true for you or not, but for me, acting and what we do there is safer because it's, on some level, it's me, but it's not my specifics. So I can live in the feelings that are very real for me without having to reveal any kind of details that might terrify me. You know? There's something, but I always equated it to like a religion. I am not a religious person. I don't believe in much spiritually in that sense. But I've always been very jealous or envious of people who have that because there is this idea that like there's someone watching, there's a path, there's some safety, there's some support, there's a road you're meant to be on. As long as you are a good person, you are following that road. I live just kind of like in entropy, right? Like there's just chaos and every decision I make could make or break me. So that's very paralyzing in some way. But when I think about scripts, that's a path, right? So like no matter what I do in that scene, in that script, it doesn't change what's going to happen 10 pages later. So there's more freedom.
Yeah. And I also think, I think that's super cool. And I think like religion too, or just faith in general, there's this like underlying feeling that, no matter how far we fall or how badly we up or how base our desires get or our trespasses and our weaknesses, there's always kind of a way. There's always hope. There's always a way out. There's always a way to kind of like use it to some degree. And I think I've really found that with what we do in our play acting, that those cracks, those the most dangerous parts of myself, the most weak and fragile parts of myself, all the things that I try to kind of like stay away from that lead me into bad paths or like I'm embarrassed to show, those all have a real currency. And they'll actually in what we do.
I think that's right. I think those things that embarrassed us or got us into trouble when we were younger, even however different they were, and are sort of forbidden in real life, because like if you need to like get up and like drive a bus every morning or like get to your job and work 9 to 5, like you can't be an emotional raw nerve. You'll never survive. So those things that I think sometimes actors are born with innately that are, problems, disadvantages when you're younger, suddenly become the thing that can make you really good at this.
Yeah. I think that,
So I latched on early. I was like, oh, something that doesn't despise me for crying at the drop of a hat. Great.
I've wanted to have you on the show for a long time. And, you know, our last conversation, you know, in New York when we were on set, you know, I just knew it. I just knew it. And I don't know. It's like you came in the kitchen. We were both like, yeah, I'm nervous. You're like, you're nervous. Talk to me about like where you think that comes from. Like because I guess, and look, man, I'm a rambling ass mother. That's another big difference between you and me. You get right to the point, like the way we fight for the writing. I like it, like take the weight of the world, and I'm like so upset, and I like fight over every little thing. And you're like very streamlined, and you just like say the one thing, and it's always going to be all right. With me, I feel like it's always like doom and gloom, and like we got to fight these mother. But like we are very similar, but we're totally unlike at the same time. And I think it's about this like fragility and strength at the same time.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about that fragility and strength.
Fragility and strength.
Yeah.
Holy. I don't have a lot of self-confidence, I think. And so when I look at how you approach the work and changes and the way you feel about the work, I honestly don't know how. I couldn't do it that way. It would be too scary. And I don't like it's an inhibitor, I think, actually in my work. I genuinely in my gut don't understand how people approach the world with confidence. Every single one of my decisions is framed by fear in some capacity. And that's rough because a lot of people talk about like, you know, fear is the one thing that you can't let, you know, fear rule your life. But I'm like, I don't know any other way to live. My identity is rooted in fear and anxiety. And I've come a long way. I used to have anxiety attacks all of the time and really held myself back a lot. And I think I am light years ahead of where I started. But, you know, we talked about bullying and what that experience can do to you, particularly because it happens at that foundational age where you are literally developing a sense of yourself. And at that age, if someone tells you that you are unworthy or ugly or not wanted, that defines you for the rest of your life, you know, for better and for worse. And so, yeah, having been through that at that age, and I get nervous to talk about it. Like, I think there's some of the nerves is I knew that was something that you wanted to talk about. And I don't dislike talking about it, but there is a sense of like, even with you guys, when I shared it with you, the first response is always, no, who would ever bully you? Like, who couldn't like you? And I get that comes from like this sense of like love and support. But it puts me in a position of having to defend myself.
How so?
Of having to prove that I was, right? Like, why would anyone bully you? Now I have to explain why.
Yeah.
You know? And so I get nervous about that. There's an immediate dismissiveness of like, well, if you're doing well in your life now and things seem good or that seems hard to believe, then prove it. And the fact is that it is an enormously identifying part of my life and feeling like, oh God, what if someone dismisses that or doesn't think that it's valid, and all of that stemming from that experience, right? I was taught at that age to fear how people feel about me. And so that continues to persist.
That one thing I also think we're very much alike is I feel like this thing, you know, like very much saved both of us, and we owe a lot to it. And I think that what comes with that too is this hunger that never goes away, and this fear that it could be taken away. Because what will we do without it? I don't know. How would you describe that kind of within yourself? What's your relationship with sort of hunger and drive?
I'm a show your work person, right? Even if the result is really good and can stand on its own, there's a part of me that goes, it's not earned. It's not good unless you can prove that you've earned it or that you can prove that you did the work to get it.
What do you mean?
Like talent is a weird thing, right? Because talent can just be innate. You can just be a charismatic, talented person and be a fantastic actor and never study, never do any kind of homework, never have a process,
Yeah.
right? That's very hard for me to get my fingers around. So like I have just like composition notebooks for days of just notes that I took for acting school, for different roles that I've had, theater, film, TV, even just things I worked on for auditions, because I have to show my work, that there's something wrong in getting something without proving that you've.
And who are you showing that to?
No one.
Well, that's the thing, because
just if someone were to ask,
I know these motherfuckers, like especially these days with like all the method acting and everything, who are constantly like advertising to the world about like, hey, well, I just got out of, I just like, was living in a internment camp, and I, you know what I mean? And it's like, and I think that like those are the things that like, you can, I don't know, you can sniff out a mile away.
Yeah.
I've never seen you be showy in that way at all.
No, I mean, I love talking process. I mean, and part of it is because I'm personal and private and I don't share a lot of my life. I do love talking about art and process and how we do these things in character.
Sure.
I do find that fascinating pretty endlessly. But I also at a certain point realized I don't actually have to do that.
Yeah.
For me to do my work well, I don't have to write it down.
Yeah.
I can just have it in my head. And so that was like a shift at a certain point. So ambition and drive, like I would never describe myself as ambitious or even driven. I think I'm committed, maybe, right? Like I love this stuff. I'm obsessed with this stuff. But the things that are required to be successful in this business at that kind of level, I don't know that I'm capable of.
What are those things?
Well, the social parts. Like my brother does sound editing and post-production, and we talk a lot about like what gets you jobs. And I think a lot of it is like, are you a fun hang? I don't think I'm a very fun hang. I'm just not, I think unless you play board games or knit or, I'm not a really fun hang. At least not in the like.
But like, or you could look at that as like you are like absolutely allergic to pretension and like you're not like you sort of I don't know, Deb. I feel like you just from what I've seen, like you really honor this, and you honor the work, and you really want it not to be good because you think like, no, this is my shot, kid, and like this will. A director will see this, and then like there's no part of you that's like that. It's like there's a faithful holiness, like it's sacred to you.
Agreed, absolutely. But I think the unfortunate reality of this business is that the former is true, right? Like there's a certain part of of this business that requires a little bit of not selling out, but a little bit of superficiality and a little bit of playing the game. And if you are purely kind of driven by hard work and good work, putting out good work, it's not enough. It isn't enough. And that's okay, right? Like,
but enough for what?
Enough to be a headliner, enough to like be the lead of a show or something like that. Like that would be a dream and ambition of mine. And that's been harder to make happen than I thought it would be in my kind of like, you prove yourself here and you prove yourself here and you prove yourself here, and it should sort of lead to something, right? And it just doesn't work that way.
Sure.
So that was a kind of an eye opener for me, I think. But I'm still trying, I just have to try in my way, which is the longer route.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, this thing is definitely not, solely a meritocracy. I mean, that is for sure.
Exactly.
There's like plenty of like super talented people who never get a shot and get stepped on over and over and over again. I just would like, I guess I would push back and argue that like the people that are sort of only sort of kind of like career focused or do everything because it's some sort of strategic means to an end, there's a hollowness to their work which will eventually kind of catch up with them. And I think that's kind of across the board. And I don't know, I think the dream is like really just finding something you just like absolutely love to do and figure out a way to be able to do it. I think what comes with that though is that like, it's very scary that could get taken away. And I do, I think that's, I think that really exists in both of us. And I think that we both really fight to make every little tiny thing as good as it possibly can be. I think I do it in a super loud and brash way. And I think maybe like I like to, and I think you're just like, whoa, like easy there, killer. Like we can just do this. Like we have it all here between us.
I mean, not to bring sexism into it too much. I can't bring it loudly in that way. I will get fired if I bring it loudly in some capacities, right?
Yeah.
I feel that very strongly.
Yeah.
The looks that I get sometimes when I push too hard, or even just the ignoring.
Give me an example about that. Like, give me an example of that.
I mean,
because I feel like everybody would do whatever I feel like on the sets I've been on, people will do whatever the say.
No, or part of the reason why maybe that is because I have had to be very tactful and state things and really, oh, that's a great idea. What if also, it's this kind of like very supportive, open, general, like when I see you guys go, no, that's not good. Make it better. Or here's what is better. And that's what I'm going to do. Again, I just have this, I just know that would be greeted with, we don't have to work with you.
Yeah. So
there's a little bit of, but that's putting too fine a point on it, because it's not to say that I wouldn't do it my way, even if that barrier wasn't there.
Right.
There is something, deeper in my character that asks of me to do it tactfully and quietly and gently.
For sure.
I like that about myself also. I think there's something in that too, that I don't really want to lose that. I like being the kind of person that is open-minded and assumes the best in people. So yeah, that comes into it too with the anxiety and all of that too. There's a part of me that's like, oh man, wouldn't it be awesome to be so confident that I could just, be like, screw you, do what I say. But then I go, but who is that?
For me, I know that I am 100 bagillion% super capable of being stupid and being terrible. Like being terrible at my job. Like I really believe, for me, like with acting, like I love swinging for the fences. Like I want to be a home run hitter. And like the only way you can do that is like to strike out and like fall flat on your face.
But this is this is why you're great.
I mean,
it's why you're great, and it's why I'm not yet. It's like, what? No. But in a certain level, right? Like there's things that I still have to learn in order to do that, right? That fear that has been implanted in me holds me back sometimes. 100% it does, and I feel that. And I think I can get there, but I have work to do.
Well, look, man. I guess it's like the difference. Look, there's like all kind. I mean, I always go back to like sports, but there's all different kind of players. Like there's the one that's like flawless, that like never up. That's
so there you go, right? Like if I talk about aspirations, I aspire to be an actor like you, not what I normally get, which is like reliable workhorse, great company member, like those things that are unexciting and uninspiring.
Yeah, but you guys flip the script on those words. It's flawless, elegant, like I don't think you could be bad. I've never said. And so I guess, but I guess all I'm saying is that with the arguing and the fighting to try to make it good.
Yeah.
I guess all I'm saying, man, is I've said it before. Like, I don't think that in whatever kind of work you do, I don't think there's ever a bigger sign of mediocrity than being like so like almost like a helicopter parent. Like you don't if you don't trust your kid, you're like watching their every move and like you're worried about them and defending them. Like trust your kid. Like like put faith in that beautiful child that they're gonna figure shit out. Like let them go, let them fail, let them experience. And I think that like in our work, these people with their ideas, like the prerequisite that for me is like, look, I'm totally capable of telling me when I'm like, is that dumb? Is that like cool?
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
But, dude, it's got to be a two-way street. Like I think that's bad.
Yes.
And you got to be able to. And I think that like we're just so, you can't be so ego driven in art that it's like my idea versus yours.
Yeah.
Yet, but like when I really think I'm right, like I like.
Well, and it helps that you are usually right as well, which is good. No, usually he's
in
right.
the podcast.
100%.
All y'all mother heard that. No, you don't cut that. Bro.
Don't cut it. Well, but but that's true. Like I remember we had a one thing with like the gun and the handing off the gun, and it was a whole thing, and we like delayed shooting because John had a problem with it. But you were 100% right. And there's this thing with like within storytelling, even as like good actors, like we're like, ooh, yeah, good material. Like you get really caught up in like the fun dramatics of it that sometimes you miss specifics and details. And the fun thing about you is you don't miss them. You don't get caught up in the fun juiciness of the scene and forget that like, oh, there's specific human things that
for sure
need to have logic
if you're
behind
broken
them.
getting in there,
Yeah.
it's like I already stopped believing it. Like you made it bullshit.
Yeah.
Like great, we can cry our off, but like the reason why we got there was like, why would we do that?
I mean, look, I want to learn and take a lot of what you do into my own practice. And I feel like, you know, as I continue to work and get there, I will. But there was something I had a teacher tell me once that I really, really liked, which is that like, for an actor, we're a little bit bulletproof because experience is experience, right? Like having a baby is having a baby, whether it's written by Shakespeare or the next junior writer at the CW, right? Like, no, if it's written terribly, it doesn't change the fact that I get to have an authentic experience. So in some ways, bad writing doesn't scare me that much because I'm a little bit bulletproof. I know how to sit in experience and let the words just float on top. The words are not that important to me. I spend very little time with the words. Most of my acting process has nothing to do with what I say. It's about the iceberg beneath the surface, the stuff I don't get to say. And I get to make that whatever the to be.
Yeah.
And it can be a million times more complex than what you've written. And frankly, it should be.
Yeah.
Right? If you're writing too much, you're taking away my job, right? I just did, you know, we did the play, I did Angels in America, and, you know, our director is this fantastic, incredible, artistic guy. You know, but a lot of what we were talking about putting in was like physicalizing subtext. And I had to kind of keep saying, no, it's subtext because it's mine, right? Like I want to keep it secret. So that's I think a part of why I don't fight in the same way with writing. If writing feels untruthful, if it feels like it's or too revealing, I'll fight back. But a lot of times for me, it's like a word. It's like, and some of it is with femmes. Like with female characters, men often like to write. A lot of my lines are like, I know you feel this way. I know you feel, you know, like vocalizing the emotions of the male characters because the men are too, you know, hard to talk about it. And so a lot of time I have to come in and be like, so I'd like to say, I feel this way. And this is how I, you know, can we write from her perspective? Can I be speaking from how I feel rather than just telling the audience how he feels? So a lot of the fight is that. But again, that's swapping you for I, right? That's a pretty easy sell. And so a lot of times I will work on a scene until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't do it with this one thing. I can make all the rest of this work. And some of that comes out of doing classical theater. Like when you do Shakespeare, you don't get to change the lines in the same way. You have to kind of figure out the problem, solve the problem, make it work. How can you say that and have it be real, even though you think it's bullshit, right? Part of the work is getting there. And so I try to do that with modern scripts as well. And I will come to the point where I'm like, I can't get past this one thing. So this is the one thing I'm going to ask for.
I would just say it the other.
You would.
Yeah.
And you'd save yourself a lot of time and stress and energy. And
then they'd like some come over and be like, could you just actually, it's actually written here. I'm like, no, I know how it's true. I'm just going to say it this way. And then they'll be like, but could you just, I heard what you said, but like, no, I can't do that. Right. And then I'm
no, you're not. You're inspiring, at least to me.
You're inspiring to me, man. Because you're like in special forces. Like you're like, you don't, I don't know.
But that's why
I just want to make that clear.
I feel like I'm constantly,
oh,
you know,
God,
like that's
dude.
where I live from.
Jiminy Christmas.
But that's right. But the perspective is fascinating, right? Perspective is fascinating. I look at you and think he's so confident. He just fights for exactly what he wants. He has
no. I'm just like, I know that I'll be if it's that way. Like, and I'm not gonna let my kid's dad be because you don't know how to write.
Kind of fear based, which is
for
interesting.
sure. Oh, fear based, dog.
So we're both just terrified out of our minds.
I disagree, but like I think fear is like a great driver.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I think it's great. I mean, I do. I mean, and I think like perpetually trying to find things that you're afraid of and then diving into them fully is like a recipe. Such a great recipe for
Yeah.
success. What's the healthiest, what in your, like, what makes a healthy set, and what's the healthiest set you've been on?
So for me, it's the ones where we are all friendly, respectful. Because the fact is, if I have to yell at you or
Yeah.
belittle you
For sure.
or fight you
Yeah.
or kiss you,
Yeah.
whatever it is, these like deeply intimate things that we do as actors,
Yeah.
it's why like intimacy coordinators and that coming in, I think is fantastic. Because if I know that I can touch you here to here, then I have freedom.
Yeah.
Whereas if I don't know where I can
Yeah,
touch you or
yeah,
not,
yeah,
then
trying to
I'm
figure that
tentative
out.
because I don't want to cross any lines.
For sure.
But if I know that we love and respect each other,
Yeah.
I can hit you hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know you're safe. I know you're good. I
Yeah.
know that as soon as they call cut, it means action to cut is
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
It's
Straight
whatever
up.
the because
Yeah.
we know exactly how far to go and we can surprise each other. But as soon as cut is called, I get to come over and be like, "You okay?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
you."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's really good for me. So I don't love the sets where there are manipulative tricks to try to make you feel something. I want to be like,
Give me
I'm
an
an
example
actor.
of that. Like, I'm not looking for dirt, but I'm just
Yeah.
wondering.
Well, no, I did a small movie where like there was a kiss in the scene, so I knew that it was coming, but like the director told him to do it early. And to genuinely surprise me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't upset about that because of the kiss part and like crossing that boundary, but I was like, I'm a fucking actor.
Yeah.
My job is to live as if
Yeah.
and not anticipate and like trust me, right?
Yeah,
The fact
yeah.
that you did that suggests that you don't
You
think
don't trust me. Right.
I know
right,
how to
right.
do my job,
Right.
which is to live in the moment. So I dislike those kinds of things.
It's just interesting. When I asked you what a healthy set was, you
Yeah.
went right to like actors that you feel that, like.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess because that's my primary, connection. I think the bad experiences I've had on set never come from crew.
Uh-huh.
It's always other actors.
It's always other
Right.
actors. Yeah.
But yeah, that feels healthy. I always looked at that and I was like, wow, if I'm ever in the position to be the person who like has some authority, like that's what I would want it to be. I want it to be a space where anyone felt like they could voice their creative ideas, right?
Yeah,
That like
yeah.
this is a collaborative thing. We are all building this wall together. So let's take each other's ideas and bounce off and feel that sense of like there are no dumb ideas, but just ideas we might not use.
For sure.
you know?
For sure.
Maybe that's also because that's what I want, because I'm a little afraid to speak up and share my ideas. That like the idea of being in a space where that would be like,
What do you like?
welcome.
Like what when you say like you're afraid to speak up and share your ideas? Like what are you afraid of? Someone's got like what are you afraid of? I mean, you do know like do you know like in your mind and you're like hanging out
Yeah.
like on set or wherever.
Yeah.
Like you're like I mean you're smarter than most of the people around you. Do you know that? I mean, I know you probably can't say that, but Deb, you're definitely smarter than the people around.
I am proud of my intelligence.
Yeah, mother.
No,
What are you talking
I
about?
don't know that we need to use words like smarter than or
But I mean, like, come on.
I am
mean,
proud
like,
of my intelligence, but I don't feel cared for or written for. So
Have you ever?
here and there, Eric Olson. Loved Eric Olson.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that because he gave me that episode, because he wrote Karen the way that he did in that third season, I really I love him. He will
Yeah.
sit in my heart with
Yeah.
you talk about like favorite people to work with.
Yeah.
Like he's up there.
Yeah.
And he talk about big swings, right? He took big swings with like that. I didn't even see it, but reading it on the page, that like black box episode for Vincent's character, right? Like he took risks and
Yeah.
he pushed for it.
Yeah.
So I really love him. And then when it came around time for Karen's episode, he listened to me. I sat down with the writer and she and I like really worked on things. This was a backstory they'd been building for years and they let me be a part of that. The director, we sat down, we did rehearsals beforehand. And like in his crime noir show, he took the crew, the entire crew upstate for a week to film a family drama in the snow. And gave me a dream, right? Like satisfied a dream for me to be sort of like the lead, like to have that, I'm gonna get emotional, to have that moment of sort of like the hard work and the dedication and the like constantly being there actually does mean something, because the squeaky wheel is what gets the grease, not the reliable, quiet one. I don't get rewarded very often for hard work. And that felt like the one time that I did, right? That he like saw that I had been consistently trying to do the best thing that I could with this role. And he honored it. And that's the best way to honor it. Like, I don't want an award. I want you to give me great material and responsibility to the story. That's what I want. So yeah, I will always, I'm really, really very grateful to him. I mean, I've been on sets where people tried to get me fired. I've been on sets where, you know, I've been written out of things, and, you know, I've had all those things, but that's a good one. Eric gets my stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I want to work with him again deeply, but we'll see. Yeah.
Why do you think you got emotional there? Like, what do you think that's about?
I mean, I think just what I said, right? That it doesn't, the kind of work that I do it's not flashy. So it doesn't pay off in tangible ways very often. And so I very much have cultivated a sense of like, if I feel good about it, then that's all that matters, right? I love external validation, but I can't rely on it. So, you know, I'm one of those weirdos who doesn't watch anything I do ever, because that starts to put it on an external thing. I want to leave at the end of the night and be like, okay, do I feel like I found something, I had a moment that was real, that I connected in some way? If that's true, then I'm happy, and that's all I need. So when something like that happens, where another person vouches for me and says like I got emotional at the top of this when you were saying nice things, you know, that stuff feels really good. It feels really good. And it's validation of, you know, the little girl that has loved this forever and usually either was ignored or sort of shunned for it, you know. You know, you talked about acting saving you, and, you know, when I was very wildly unpopular when I was younger, you know, I stopped talking for a while. There was like I talked at home, but like there was a time at school where I just didn't open my mouth because everything I said seemed to sort of elicit some kind of insult or backlash of some kind. But I'd always loved acting and singing and dancing and doing things like that. So I went out for the play. I don't know why, in 7th grade, like just did it. And that was the only time I talked at school, was like for my lines in the show. And so there was a real part of like, and then when I did finally kind of start coming back out of my shell, it was with those kids, right? Like the kids that I had done the plays with, and they become my like lifelong best friends. Yeah. So there is a sense of this part of me that is childlike, that wants to be 12 forever, but was so slapped down at that time for being that. Anytime I get any little like, oh, I like 12-year-old Deb. Yeah. Like that little girl needs that healing so badly. Yeah. I do a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I did this Dungeons and Dragons show called Relics and Rarities. And literally it was like 12-year-old Deb brain on a paper that I handed to some people, and they made a set, and we hired people, and we did the show, and you can watch it, you know, and I didn't realize it at the time. And then when it came out and people had positive things to say about it, it floored me, because it was validation that I didn't even know I needed, because that girl had been so quieted within me. And I had poured her into this show, and people were like, oh, I like this. And that was enough to kind of make me shake. I'm a little shaky now. I'm needy, I guess, in that way.
And you think this like all stems like 12-year-old Deb, like and what was going on in your life then?
I hate it. I hate that, like...
What you hate what?
That like 13-year-old kids like determined the rest of my life.
But I mean, like, think about like how many people are like walking around with that, right?
Well,
like,
I mean, that's the thing, right? This is not a unique experience. I feel like most people had some form of ostracization or bullying when they were at that age. And it's funny too, because like I look back and I'm like, nobody that I was dealing with were like psychopathic kids that love torture. It's just like a natural, weird societal order thing that seems to happen around that time. And you kind of end up on one end of that pecking order. And so, yeah, I hate that it continues to determine the decisions I make as a grown-up woman. But it's interesting. I just did a panel with some other women who also said they were bullied and in this business, in this industry. And I was like, there must be something about like compassionate, vulnerable people. Because that was always a question to me of like, why? Like, why was I so egregious, And I
Why were you so egregious?
Yeah,
or why
like,
were you
why was I target? Like,
Right.
why was this aimed at me?
Right.
Because you do wonder that, because there's a part of me that deeply believes that I am an annoying person who people don't want to be around. Like that's deeply what I learned.
Like I know that you have that a little bit. Yes.
I was, they'd make lists of like prettiest hair, prettiest eyes. So it's always ugliest girl in school, right? Like, and when someone tells you that at 12, when everyone tells you that at 12, you believe it, right? There's a part of you that will never not believe that. Where was I starting?
So like, even like with that, like you're on this list, like you are the ugliest girl in the school.
Yeah.
And then like what, 20 years, like what, you're on True Blood?
Well,
and
less,
you're like this, like, feels weird as saying it, but like you're like this like international like sex symbol and like beautiful, like, again, I don't want to go back to like, how could you, it's not about that, but like, what does that do then? Like, do you like, what does that do when you're
Imposter.
like the object? You feel
like an imposter,
even though it's something even though it's like literally like your type, like you're on this list with a bunch of like prepubescent, like pimply faced losers,
right.
And then you're like literally like in the world zeitgeist, this beautiful woman, but it's. I totally understand how it's so hard to like kind of like it's so hard to sort of like smash or destroy like these but like how does that then compute? Like what does that do?
It's awkward. I think also, like we've done these conventions and things, and a lot of times when people meet me on the street, I get a lot of like, who you look like, not I know who you are. Because I don't feel like I don't identify as like a desirable person, I guess. So I always assume that when people meet me, I'm a bit of a disappointment. That with the hair and the makeup and the lighting and the styling and the setup and everything there and the acting, that's, an illusion of some kind. And so, but yeah, and again, my brain knows that I am taking this experience and I am blowing it way out of proportion, like I know that, but again, there's just something about your heart and your gut that.
I'm sorry, you feel like you're blowing what out of proportion?
That I know that people aren't disappointed to meet me, or that not everyone finds me annoying, but knowing is not the same as like believing.
Feeling, yeah.
Right? And so that fear is always there. And, I part of my response when people are always like, oh, I can't believe, you're someone who was bullied. You seem so nice, or you seem, is I kind of go, we present the opposite of our fears, right?
Sure.
So if my deepest fear is that I am undesirable and unwanted and unlikable, then every action I do is in contrast to that. It's to make sure that I'm not annoying to you, or you like me, or that so, I've been dismissed as like, oh, you're a people pleaser. And I'm like, it is deeper than that. This is a survival tactic. And it serves me in some ways, and it really doesn't in others. I can very much be a doormat. I can very much, as we've been talking about, I jump through a million hoops before I say anything that could possibly, push me in a direction of being a confrontation. It sucks, but I don't know. I also feel like I'm a compassionate person, and when I meet people who I can feel have that, like that energetics thing where like, oh, I can feel like you're someone who maybe got some of those comments or lived like that, who have that little bit of self-confidence. Like there's a part of me that's like, I'm there. I will be your friend, right? Like I don't want anyone else to ever feel that way.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to feel that way again. So I have that outreach in me. I'm really drawn to people who I think, share that experience.
You've hung on, for better or for worse,
Yeah.
to the trauma that was caused to you as this young girl, and it's still very much alive in you. But I would also argue it's also what makes you empathetic and compassionate and loving and kind. It's why everybody, you know, and I know it's like, Deb, I get it.
We get it.
But like, dude, like you're not like, I don't know.
I know, there's
it's so
nothing
hard
you
for
can
me
say.
to look at
I
you
know.
as a doormat. It's like, you know, like you are the person. You're the person on every set I've worked. Like you are the pinnacle.
Wow.
You are everybody. You are. And so it's like, you know, when I'm going back to do this thing, I'm like, I can't play Frank Castle without you. I can't. Like it's like, you want a reason. Like, why is he there? Like, what is he doing there?
Yeah.
It's like, if it's not you, everyone else has got, like, if, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's, but does the feeling ever come up? Like, that look at me now, mother. Like, does that ever come up?
No. And I do wonder why. There's a part of me that goes, maybe it's just like, again, my doormat psychosis won't even let me get that far. But there's also something like, I talk to a lot of people who's like, they're bully. They know their name. It's a full first and last name.
Straight up.
They can remember every instance of thing. It was a rivalry. It was a thing, right? I don't have that. Because for me, it wasn't like, I didn't get beat up, right? I got socially outcasted. And pranked. Prank shows are not funny to me. They just give me hives.
How did you get pranked? Like, what do you mean pranked?
So, you know, you want to talk about prank phone calls? Like when your phone rings at 4 a.m, you don't think somebody's calling to do a prank. You think someone's dead, right? You think like somebody we love has been in an accident. So a number of times my parents like woken up or something like that for that, or myself, right? You know, I had evil, like cruel notes and things left in my locker. I told you, you know, I stopped showering after gym class because someone took my clothes and like threw them out in the hall. But then you get called stinky because now you're not showering, you know, like it's just a constant thing. Even small things of like, I remember standing at like doors trying to enter my classroom and just being like, hey, can I get by? And people ignoring me like I didn't exist. So I just waited patiently until they moved and I could get into the classroom. So it's just like consistent, persistent, not cruelty, like outright cruelty, but just like you are not of value. And it wasn't one person. It wasn't, there were plenty of people who didn't participate, but also weren't my friends. So I didn't, you know, so it feels like a wall. I don't have that one person that I'm like, that's the person who I would say to death. It was just a societal not even choice. I don't know. It's just like a thing that happened. And I do think there's something about, you know, we think pranks are funny. We think, you know, even like the notes that got left were like lines from movies, you know, they weren't even original, meant for me. So yeah, I don't think that these were like evil psychopathic kids. I think they just thought they were being funny and I was an easy target because I was going to cry and not fight back. Or I was gonna just be quiet and not fight back. And I was weird, you know, I was definitely like, cause I wanted to be a kid. I wanted to sing and dance and do cartwheels in the hall. And I didn't want to date and drink and go out and be rowdy, right? Like I just wanted to be an actor, you know? I wanted to play make-believe in the schoolyard forever. And I think it just made me an easy target. I was a non-threatening target.
It seems like you had like no relief from this. It was just like you woke up in the morning and you knew you were like facing this.
It was interesting. The one movie I can never ever watch is that 8th Grade movie by Bo Burnham. I know it's the best movie ever made because I broke into like ancient heaving sobs about halfway through it because I get that girl. I get her on a level. I don't know how he gets her. I get her on a really deep level. Like that feeling of like, oh, like your parents made it so that somebody invited you to a party that they don't want you at, but you have to go because they thought they were helping, right? And it's probably a pool party or something where you have to be in your most vulnerable state. But you go home and you're like, oh, this will be the one, right? This will be the one where I go. And they'll be like, oh, cute suit. Or like, oh, what a great, you practice stories. And they'll be like, oh, what a great story that is. I underestimated you. Like, oh, I wish I knew you were this cool, right? You make up these fantasies. And then you show up and people ignore you. and you go sit in the corner. And there's like a very unique experience of being like invisible and so conspicuous at the same time.
Wow.
You know, everyone is intimately, energetically aware that you are there, but they are choosing to pretend you're not. And they're not doing anything purposefully, outwardly mean. No one's necessarily calling you fat legs or da-da-da or moly or whatever, you know, I would get unwanted, you know.
Now as a parent, like,
Yeah.
what did your parents do that worked? What was did your parents do that definitely didn't work? And how is that going to affect you in case this,
Yeah.
you know, when this rears its head in your life?
Yeah, look, I mean, they get let off the hook right away here because I didn't tell them. Partially because of that, because I knew that my parents loved me so much that they would not be able to help themselves, you know?
And what did you think, that they would be like disappointed, or do you think that they would
the opposite,
be hurt?
that they would run in there and that there would be a school assembly and people's parents would be called. And the fact is, I knew that would make it worse, right? Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I knew it would make it worse. I knew it would make me even stand out even more. You know, my solution was, as soon as I stopped talking and got quiet and like stopped putting myself out there, it stopped. I just was alone, but it stopped, which is a terrible lesson to learn at that age, but it worked. I just knew in my gut that if I got my parents involved, it would make it worse. It would make me a bigger target. That I had to show enough, you know, it's that don't snitch sort of thing, right? Like I had to show that I was tough enough to take it and I wasn't going to go running to mommy, right? So I think, I mean, I don't actually know what the situation would have been if I had told them, but I did not tell them until many, 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 many years later. And I don't know what I'm going to do if this is something that I likely will have to deal with my son. I'm terrified of school and middle schoolers. I think middle schoolers are so scary. And I don't actually know what the answer is, other than just to like, I think what's helped me later on in life is to know that it literally had absolutely nothing to do with me. It's so easy to personalize it and go, it's because I'm this, and this. Mm-hmm. I think some of that is why I was a target for it. But like, I bet you most of those kids don't even remember half of the said to me because it wasn't important to them. They were just saying something funny to be impressive to their friends and not be me, right? They're just fighting to not be me, not be at the bottom. You know, this wasn't like a sit down, we're going to write out a campaign of how to make Deb miserable. It just coincided
and then
that
became
way.
The social dynamic of the school. To become somebody who's so wildly talented and so wildly loved and have this beautiful family and this beautiful child and this incredible career, and to be so just beautiful and revered, like that is possible. And I think on the other hand, also for people that whether they're going through their own and just want to step on somebody's neck, or they're just so misguided that they're just going to say something cool because it's going to make that person seem cool.
Right.
Or they really are just like a deeply troubled mother who just like enjoys watching other people suffer, or they just want to go along with the status quo, whatever it is. Like these things have like real lasting impact. But I think it's also like be on the hunt, man. Like be on the hunt for it. Like find the kid that's being made feel that way, and be the person that goes and stands by that kid. Like be the person that like squashes that. Like be that sheepdog. Like that is your, like that is what you do on this planet.
I think giving it like there's a big difference between like fighting for yourself and fighting for a cause,
or
right?
Standing up for somebody else is way easier than standing up for yourself.
Or it gives you something back, right? It's not just survival. It's, you know, it's defense. It's you know, it's being a hero, you know? And so I do love that idea, you know, like it's that great show, Pen 15. That show I can watch even though I relate to it, but there's a part of me that's like, but they had each other, right? Like that's what made so much of that bullying and that experience of that show survivable, is they had someone else. And so that's the one thing I would have wanted was like one buddy. And there probably were people who would be, but I was just so afraid at the time that I couldn't even reach out, to anyone to kind of make that happen.
Yeah.
But yes, I think, teaching our kids to be the compassionate person who steps forward for others. If it turns out that, my kid is in my position, just try him a full sense of self, that it's okay to be uniquely you, whoever that is, right? Unabashedly, uniquely you. And I know that's what got me in trouble, but I don't know. I just want to continue to say that to him and say that to other kids in his class, and hope that as parents who have been through that we can kind of raise our kids to be aware of it when it happens. Because almost like what you just said, that if there's a kid who's like, oh, it'll just make my buddy laugh if I prank phone call this kid. And for them, it's nothing. They just don't think it has any impact whatsoever. They just think it's a laugh one night with their friends and they'll forget about it in a month. But it might have a lasting impact for that other person. Just implanting in their mind that it might have more meaning than you think.
And I think to take a step further, that that one little question, that one little hesitation, is that a thing to do? Or to see it in your homeboy and be like, why does he want to hurt this mother? And that right there, whatever you want to call it, whether it's from God or from what, but a spark of empathy, a spark of compassion. If you then act on it and say, dude, why are you doing that? No, don't do that. That is such an opportunity. And that's,
so I guess if I were talking to anyone who has been a bully or has, in a bad moment said something cruel to someone else or done something to be funny at the expense of someone else, anyone who's been in that position. And you know what? I bet more of us have than have not. I've done it, right? We've all succumbed to that place because society is impossible. But it's just to go, all right, you've made that mistake, move on and be better, right? Learn from that and know that what we say and the things that we do have consequences and repercussions for others. And if you feel like you can, just get sorry, I was such an idiot when I said that. And I know so much better now. And frankly, I knew better then. And I succumbed and I'm so sorry. We are not infallible people. We are very, very fallible, especially when it comes to those societal striations. And so I guess that's grace. I don't think that these were bad people. I just think that sometimes the world sucks and it's these very human pressures that we put on ourselves. But then again, like I said, I'm the kind of person, I prefer to see the best in people. I prefer to assume the best in people. So that's my assumption of back then, that this was never a targeted, mean, malicious thing. It was mean, but not necessarily mean people. But I don't know.
I think we all are stuck in this 12-year-old version of us in one way or the other. And
every single person you talk to has a story from that, whether they were the bully or the bully.
That's right.
They got it from someone else, right? We all have a story from that.
And I think most of the bullies are just reeling from being bullied, who just, are just any way we can just put that on that mother, so it ain't on me. Just
exactly.
That's the...
It's just survival.
Yeah. And so it's again, it's how do we raise these youngsters to at least be, because, in some ways, it's things have gotten way softer and we talk about, back in the way, it'd be suck it up, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But we've also gotten, maybe by approach, it's we've tied a ribbon around it and be we'll have a conversation. I think navigating things for kids is way, way more difficult and everything's online and hidden. And
I don't even want to, oh my God, the whole online social media, constant comparison. You can be bullied when you're home alone in bed. I just
wake
can't
up
even.
to it. And it's happened before you even get there, for sure. For sure. What would you say to Deb? What would you say to 12-year-old Deb?
My therapist has asked me that several times, and I still don't know an answer to that either. No. I mean, what I would say is, it's not about you. It's just not about you. It's just not about you. You're the unfortunate, receptor for this experience. But, you know, it has defined my personality, my identity more than it ever needed to. It just didn't need to.
Is there any parts of it? Are there any parts of it that were a gift?
Well, I guess, compassion and empathy and understanding for other people.
Yeah, that's not like a throwaway.
No,
dude.
that's huge.
It's like, yeah.
And
drive, probably determination, right?
Definitely. We talk about fear being a motivator and things like that. I think that is true. It is also an inhibitor.
I love 12-year-old Deb. Man.
Thank
I just
you.
would do anything.
I'm trying to get back to her,
yeah,
right?
She's cool as man. And like you didn't bend. You didn't like go try. I don't know.
Look, I mean, my husband has it too. He has this really strong sense of justice and of respect for like each individual person in the way that they need respect, you know? And so I deeply admire that. And he fights hard for himself and for other people and for me, even when I don't want him to, you know, even when I'm like, oh, I'd rather be quieter about this. He like, no, you're not allowed to come at my people like that. And,
Tell me about him. Tell me about Egypt, man. Let's talk about him.
He's the best. But like even that, like, you know, I remember we were having dinner and like conversations about like spouses and things like that come up. And I notice a lot of people feel very comfortable complaining about their spouse or talking about like the problems that they had with their spouse. And we have problems, we have arguments, we have all of the things that all couples have. But like my gut instinct is I always want to think the best of my husband. And I really want him to always think the best of me. Mm-hmm. Even when we do the wrong thing and the thing that hurts the other person or makes them feel bad. Like I always want him to know that I'm always intending and assuming that he is the best version of himself in every given moment. And I'll say the same to you, because you've said several times in this that like wanting to bring your best self to me and all that. I always assume that you are. That is my base living level. That's where I'm comfortable. And it does sometimes, I think, let take advantage of me and you know, this, that, and the other. But I think my husband's amazing. I really do. And I think that a number of the best things in my life are because of him and the way that he helps push me beyond my boundaries. Because I'm a risk-averse person, I'm very comfortable just settling in, finding my routine, my thing that I like, and I don't push very hard into new things. And so I wouldn't be a parent if it weren't for him. You know, there are places I wouldn't have visited. There are, you know, future plans in our lives that are huge endeavors that I would never think to do. So I think he makes me brave in a lot of ways. Yeah. In fact, for this, my husband does a podcast sometimes. He hasn't done it in a while, but I told him I was nervous to come here and do this. And I was like, so what do you like what makes good podcast guests for you? Yeah. And, you know, he said, I'm sure exactly what you would say, which is like authenticity, honesty. You know, you don't have to be a great yarn spinner or like tell great stories, because I don't feel like I do that very well. It's just about like being present and talking and being a little vulnerable.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah, he is cool.
Yeah.
He is cool. He's always been really, I remember in the beginning when I started playing that part and I was like, I'm going to this up. He was so cool to me about it.
No, he's a comic book, you know,
like guru.
Well, he just loves it. It's been his whole life. And so, you know, this stuff does really matter to him, but he's the perfect example of that, because I think actually the people who love this stuff want it. They want you to be great. They really, they're not against you. They're not like sitting back, show me what you got. They're like, oh yeah, I really want Jon to be great at this. Yeah. So they're on your side.
I think that's right. And I think that like once they see your, I think in the rare cases when people are sort of like don't do the work or like about it for themselves, then they see it, and then you've crossed the line.
Well, I tell this story all the time about you, because at the time I was a little bit, I'll be honest, I was a little bit like Jon. But
what in the world?
Okay, so it was
incriminating? Like, how could you? What?
No, you did nothing. You did nothing.
Good God, bullying me, dude.
I know I didn't learn my lesson. I should have learned my lesson.
Smoke more reefer, bro. All right, go ahead. Why me?
Okay, no, not. But so you were about to come on. You'd come on, done the second season, and like me, Charlie, Vince, we knew you were amazing. Like we knew it. No. We knew it. We'd worked with you. I had a front row seat to that performance. If I don't get to shirk off myself, you don't get to shirk off your part of that. So you're being announced, or the show, something is happening. It must be NYCC, like a convention of some kind, because we're all there up on stage, and they play a clip of what we've done so far. And it's all of us. At the very end is the back of your head as you're walking down the hallway, and you hear, the one bench, two bench. It's like you're like, everybody in that room like wet themselves. They were so excited. They didn't get excited like that for any of us coming out. They were so excited about that. And I sat there and I was like, what do they know? They haven't seen anything that he's done yet. There's the back of his head and some mumbling, ears, and they're like, think he's the greatest thing since sliced toast. Like, Jon,
I would say.
Well, it's not you, but there is something about this space, and we go back to talking about like it's not a meritocracy, right?
No,
like
it's true.
That role, the cachet that you bring, your previous work,
for sure,
you're set up, right? Like they're ready to just love you. And there was that was a moment where it wasn't so much on, but just like, wow, that's confirmation of the way entertainment and human brains engage with this stuff. And I was like, so you've seen my work consistently hard for 3 years, and I get nothing back of this head, and you're like, Jon, man,
unbelievable.
We know he's good, but you don't know he's good. He could suck at this.
See, that's so funny, because I was like, dude, I was like mortified. I was horrified. And that's the thing. You don't want to be the guy that like they see the back of your head and they go crazy, and then the show comes out and they're like,
well, you're lucky that you're not that guy. So.
No, well, I mean, in this case, yes. So far, but yeah.
I remember the first time I met you. We were doing the hospital stuff at the very beginning, and you were, when you sit, you were like this. You were so small when you sort of sat in this chair like this, and I remember being like, "Oh, that's Jon," and I had this thing where, again, because I was like, oh, if I'm ever in a position of like authority thing, I want to make sure that it's a really welcoming thing. So anytime we had guest stars, co-stars, anyone, I wanted to go up and be like, hi, welcome,
always,
right?
Always.
Like,
you always
we're so excited to have you, because I just know people will do their best work and work hard if they feel supported and like welcomed.
For sure.
So I remember coming up to you and be like, hi, I'm Deborah, like just dorky me, but I was very nervous about it. And you're like, hi, yeah, okay. You're very polite. and I get asked about you all the time, and, I don't want to ruin your image. You're like your hard image. But I always have to be like, he's very polite and he's very nice.
Why would I be anything else, man?
Why would you be anything else?
Yeah.
But I do get the feeling that like people want me to be like, oh yeah, he's like, he's hard to read, and he's,
no, man.
He's like, yeah, and he's, I heard once that like in preparation for Punisher, he like hiked climbed the Brooklyn Bridge.
Those things can also be true.
Those can also be true.
Yeah.
But like I always have to be like, I don't want to like ruin the thing he's got going on, or people think he's like really like
that's so
tough
funny.
and
no,
guarded.
Soft like a baby, man.
He's a little
I'm just nervous and want it to be good.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, a little marshmallow, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a part of me that feels really honored that's what I think of when I think of you. Because it's funny, like we used to take pictures, and you were always like,
dude, this is like make fun of Jon Day.
No, it's not.
Dude,
I always loved
this
it.
This is behind the curtain.
Well, honesty.
Go ahead. Hey, what did he say? What did he say? Honesty, authenticity. All right, keep going. Keep destroying my image.
But like, it was always so funny.
It was my last job.
You'll get to get out of your box. They'll stop typecasting you.
I know. Let's go.
Something you're not.
I know.
You can actually get some sort of, sympathetic.
I hope so, man.
Vulnerable men in there.
I hope so, man.
But there's something to that, right? That like, I think it's impressive, and I think it's interesting, and part of what I love about working with you is that there's that duality. It's exactly what I said about like my favorite sets, which is like the ones where you can be like, oh, we're kind to each other, we're polite with one another, we love and respect each other. But like once it's action,
well, I mean, I think that's the only way it can get dangerous though. Yeah. Like to try to create it when there's no trust and where it's not totally safe, you can't totally dangerous. I think then it's like, for me, and like I've said it so many times, it's like the way this thing saved me is like my life was so wild. It was so dangerous. It was so out of control. And then I found a way that I could like put all that into it. And especially I think like becoming a dad and a husband, it's just like to just like love these people so much more than I love myself, and to have like a reason to do it for.
I do think there's something about the confidence that you bring and the sort of steadfast belief in the work that I think might make you
what
a
happened
little
to Marshmallow Man, Doug?
You will.
Like,
Listen,
hey,
you can
let's
be
leave
both.
this part in and get rid of
no. But again, you can be both.
Yeah, you can. You can.
Be confident and vulnerable.
I think so.
I just don't know how to be vulnerable and confident.
I think you do, Deb. I really think you do.
I'll get closer. Well, that's also, I do wonder, like, because I'm unfamiliar with it, maybe I just don't recognize it when it's happening.
That was a real telling thing. It's like your thing about like being, it's like it does. It's like we say these things. It's like how I always have to, it's funny. Like I always have to like tell everyone, especially like when I started acting, like I'd always have to like kind of be like, you used to get a lot of fights and, I've been in trouble with the law. And like, I would always like kind of like lead with that. And I think a big part of it was like, I just want to make sure nobody me there because I wanted this to be safe. And it's like, dude, I haven't been that guy in decades. Like stop, like let all that go. Yeah. And like, you've got to like, kind of like tell everybody the narrative of yourself, whether it's right or it's wrong. And I think that they can be empowering. I also think they can be crippling as
Yeah. What's the thing? So many people think of acting as like, oh, you must be a good liar or you must be that. And I'm like, no, it's the absolute opposite.
For sure.
I'm a terrible liar.
For sure.
I'm an excellent truth teller.
For sure.
Right? You see everything in my cheeks and my eyes. That's what makes me a good actor. It's actually the opposite. And so sometimes all of that feeling, all of that history, all of that's churning, we think of actors as like, oh, they should be chameleons. They should change every single time. But I'm like, no, every other art form, whether you're a painter or a director, you're allowed to have a style. Yeah. You're allowed to say like, here's me and what matters to me as an artist. And I want to explore those themes in my work. As actors, we should be afforded the same exploration, right? Yeah. That's not to say that you're seeing through someone else's eyes or through character's eyes, but that's for me what it is. It's Deborah seeing through Karen's eyes, experiencing the world through her perspective. So it doesn't mean that I 100% change who I am to be Karen, and it doesn't mean that Karen is 100% me, but it's what do I as an artist see when I look at the world through her experiences. And it means I get to bring some of who I am. That's why we do Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth over and over and over and over again. It's because each individual actor brings themselves to that part and therefore brings out a different aspect of it. And we forget that because film and TV is so single, one-off. Yep. We're not interested in multiple interpretations of the same thing. Yep. We assume there's a right and a wrong. Yep. There just isn't.
Like the fear of motivator, like we talked about that, but there's also that thing of like, I think this thing can take on a new life when it's like, this is my sword. Yeah. Like this is my sword to go like conquer the world.
I always like this thing. Judi Dench said that acting was the shy person's revenge. I always really like that quote. Because it does feel that way. It's like, I never felt like I could express myself for fear of being, shut down. Mm-hmm. But when I act, I just get to take revenge on all of you. And just, you have to see Deborah for like an hour, like you're going to sit in the dark and listen to me talk, that's a little revenge.
Just talk a little bit about theater and being on stage. I know that's like
that was
your
the
real
dream.
Love. Yeah.
Someday I'll get back to that on the regular. So I'm a very selfish actor in the sense that my main concern is, have I had an experience that I find artistic and motivating and fulfilling? I'm not super concerned with whether the audience likes it or even that the story gets told in any particular way. I'm amenable to notes and things like that coming in. But at the end of the day, that's why I do this. I do this because I love doing it, not because I even like telling stories or, I just enjoy acting. And the crazy thing is that in film and TV, you're just a sort of a cog. You're a brick in the wall, right? And I want my brick to be as beautiful and as strong and as interesting as it can be.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, someone else is building this wall. Yep. Someone's going to paint over it. They're going to put music. They're going to do a whole thing. It's not really my work.
For sure.
At the end, so, which is again why at the end of the day, I've done my part of the work, and I just kind of want to let it go.
Hence, no need to watch it.
No need to watch because that's right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I've already done it, and I had a front row seat to my scene partner's work.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
But with acting, yours is the last hand. There's just nothing that comes
on stage
after you, right? Yeah. On stage, yeah. Every single performance is one-on-one with the audience, with this character, with my scene partners, and that's so empowering and so exciting. And I like the chance that like of trying something new and it failing, but knowing I get to do it again tomorrow, and I don't know. There's kind of nothing quite like it, except maybe Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. What about Dungeons and Dragons High, man?
I love it so much.
Right? I think that might
What?
Taking Dungeons and Dragons and smoking weed.
Oh,
that might be
because
you
like think you're original.
Is that what everybody does?
That.
Oh, okay. I don't know what Dungeons and Dragons. Like I don't. It's like a game, but like you imagine you're like in the game, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's just a collaborative storytelling with some characters.
And you tell the story?
Yeah, I'm a dungeon master. So generally I've written an arc and created a world, and then players explore it. And I make calls as to like how difficult it is to climb a wall or fight a monster or that kind of thing.
And so if you say this is a real difficult monster to fight, then you've got to come up with a different way of fighting it?
Yeah, or either it can just be like how hard you hit it and how long the thing goes, but it might be how do you negotiate your way out of it? If you can't actually kill a dragon, but it's going to eat you, how do you tell it not to? So there are other kind of checks that you can do, persuasions and deceptions and intimidations. And then
you decide whether you beat the dragon, the person beat the dragon?
Yeah, there are stats. There's a lot of math involved that can make that happen. But like,
God damn.
You want to play D&D?
I mean, I'll try. I mean, what do you think I'd be able to do it?
Literally right now.
Sure.
All right. So let's see. You've got a bow strapped to your back. A sword and a dagger at your hilt, right? So you're walking through the woods. It's dark. It's at night. Almost no moonlight is coming through. You hear a crack off in the distance. Something large stepped on a branch. What would you do?
First thing, how far away is the crack?
Give me a perception check. So then you roll dice, and we'd see how perceptive you are. Let's say you roll a 13. Okay, and you're pretty perceptive, so you have a +3 to that. That's 16. So I know, 16, that's pretty perceptive. You think it's about 20 feet away.
Okay. It's about 20 feet away. I think I take out my bow first.
Yeah. So you take a bow, you're readied, you're aimed, you're looking.
Right at where the spot's coming, yeah.
Okay. Slowly creeping towards you, suddenly into view, a little bit of eye shine in the darkness. You see an owl bear. This is a 10, 15 foot tall monster. It looks like an owl, but it has the body of a bear. It opens its beak and squawks at you. What do you do?
Have I ever met an owl bear before? Like, are owl bears?
We could do a history check. So this is D&D. You're playing D&D.
What do you mean a history check?
So a history check would be like, in your past, in your history, have you experienced
this? Okay, so how do I check? Yeah, let's check
You would roll a dice. Let's say you have a low history. You roll a 13, but you have a -3. That's a 10. So no, you've never met an owl bear in your life. You have no idea whether it's threatening or not, but it is squawking at you.
I'd be like, yo, are you my friend or are you my foe?
Fantastic. You speak to it?
Yeah, I try.
Give me an animal handling check. So you'd roll another one. So this is we kind of see based on your character sheet that you've created, you're going to be good and bad at different things.
Who I create the sheet?
You could, or I could, or you could get a pre-made sheet.
But why don't you just make your sheet that you're great at everything?
Because, if you're a wizard who's in school studying books to learn magic, you're probably not spending that much time in the gym. Versus if you're, a knight who goes out and slays dragons, maybe you're socially awkward and don't know how to talk to people. So your charisma status.
Is it within your interest to not be great at everything?
You want flaws. Like one of my favorite characters, my friend Tommy played Viros. He was a prince. And the idea was that he was very, he'd been kind of pampered his whole life and everyone always laughed at all his jokes and said that he was wonderful and handsome. But he's actually not that funny and he's not that handsome. He just has been sheltered. So when he got out in the world and started investigating, he thinks that he's this charming, suave individual, but his stats, his literal charisma stats are very low. So he would fail constantly. And part of his story throughout the campaign was him learning that he wasn't as charming as he thought he was. So flaws are great. Flaws make good story.
But is the goal to win?
No,
What's
there
the
is
goal?
no goal is to tell a great story.
Tell a great story.
And there might be arcs of like one big bad is like hurting innocent people, and there are monsters to fight. So you're motivated to be a hero, and that's what I love about D&D is practicing being a hero. It's practicing protecting the innocent and stopping the bad guy and standing up for your fellow players. It's the greatest game ever created. And it's just collaborative storytelling. You just sit at a table. It's as close as you can get to when you were 7 on the play yard, just like making up games and stories. And I love it. And I will do it until I die.
Yeah. Dude.
And it saved me through pandemic. It saved me through strikes. Like I always had this thing to turn to for creativity and finances, frankly.
How finances?
People pay me to run games for them and pay me to write campaigns and do things like that.
Yo.
Yeah. It's like a whole side career now. But it's cool. And like I said, it's that one weird space where we're all nerdy. So I don't.
You do it like free of, there's no nerves or insecurity.
Well, there's nerves and insecurity, but I don't have to worry about not being cool. Whereas like every time I'm on a Daredevil set, I'm a little worried that I'm not cool.
Yeah.
I'm not cool enough for everybody.
It's funny, man. And again, we were talking about this and joking about it earlier, but it's like when you say like True Blood being cool and stuff, like I hear I feel the exact same. I felt like I never could fit in because I was always like this athlete and this boxer guy who was like trying to be an actor. And like, I always felt like, not cool enough. Like I could never like really like speak that language. And I remember when we were, when Walking Dead like first happened, True Blood was like, I remember we were at like one of those awards that like one of those like, I don't know, like Saturn Awards or something like that. And I remember like, Walking Dead hadn't come out yet, but me and Sarah were there and we had to announce something. And they showed like it was like the True Blood cast and like, it was like close-ups of their face and like me and Sarah walked out and I remember who it was, but like one of the main women on that cast, and she was like, "Who are they?" Like that, like kind of like zombie show, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, that's her."
Hollywood is a weird space where either you were always cool or you were like your story where you're like, I was a nerd, or I was a jock who didn't really do this stuff, but fell in love with it and then felt like an imposter because I didn't come from the weird artsy clique. Mm-hmm. Or you're me, who was always the weird artsy kid who then goes into Hollywood and everyone's cool and wants to party. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm, Mm-hmm. So it's a weird space where, I don't know. I don't, at those industry parties, I always end up in the kitchen doing dishes with the caterers. Cause really? I've done that several times. Like one of the Netflix parties, like at Ted Sarandis' house.
You went into the kitchen, started doing dishes? I
did dishes in the kitchen because I was so nervous. I didn't know who to talk to or how to be there. So I went in to use the bathroom or something like that. And I don't know. I just was like, oh, let me get that. I don't know. My brain needed something to do.
Yeah.
I think that's also why games and stuff help me, because it's like an activity. And I can get to know people better if it's not just talking. If it's like, oh, we're playing a game and I'm learning who you are.
Yeah.
So there's something about like, oh, I need to do something like helpful for the world right now instead of just standing at some fancy house pretending that I am fancy and belong.
Yeah. I don't know. Those things are getting easier. I mean, like I avoid them because I just want to be with my kids if I have time, but they're getting easier because I feel like I know people. Like I get to see old friends, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't know very many people.
Yeah.
That's another downside of being introverted in this industry.
Yeah.
I don't tend to hold on to those relationships very, very well. That's tricky. This art forum, all of it was really very important to me for a very long time because of how I came into it and how much I put into it and how much I had to prove that I deserved to do it and all of that. And the problem is that anytime it went poorly, that shattered me because it was the only thing I had going for like, what is my identity? What is my value? And so when it went badly, that fell as well. And my husband really wanted to be a dad. And I had never seen myself being a parent. It was not part of my plan. Uh-huh. But we kept talking about it, and it got to the point where I was like, oh, if I don't do this with him, I will be denying him like a core need, a dream of his. And I can't do that. I sat down and I went, you know what? It would also be really healthy for me if I had something I cared about more than all this bullshit.
Totally.
You know? And I kind of knew in my gut that that's what kids do.
For sure. For sure.
Right?
And you don't really know till you know.
Till you know, but I knew.
Yeah.
You know, and part of the problem is that like the main narrative I had gotten about parenting, especially as a mother, was like martyrdom and you're never going to sleep again and you give up all your identity for your kid. And like, it was all this like terrible stuff. Yeah. And I was like, why would you do that unless you were called to it? And I've been so grateful to have been proven wrong. It's just the best. He's my favorite person in the world. And I genuinely will choose him over pretty much anything else nowadays. And so, yeah, that like when I used to skip an industry event or whatever because I was nervous or didn't want to go or, you know, that always felt like cheapening out or like chickening out is what I mean.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh no, I just want to spend time with him.
For sure. For sure.
And nobody can question that.
All the you want them to be able to do, you got to try to do it yourself. And all the don't want them doing, like try to cut those things out. You know, of like letting the base parts of yourself win, like making the better decision, like just be in that.
Yeah. Well, you know, like I was a self-deprecating person. I was the kind of person that would walk around and say cruel things about myself because there's that little bit of armor that's like if I say it first. But I, you know, consciously stopped doing that in front of him and really altogether.
Good.
Because I don't want him picking up that habit, right? I want him to think I want him to be confident and to feel proud of who he is and his identity. So yeah, you talk about wanting to be the best version of yourself around someone.
Yeah.
But it's also, I don't know, it's oddly for me, it's been easy. It's been so easy to be that with him. He brings out the best in me.
Yeah.
And I didn't think so. Like because parenting was not like on my list of or my vision for myself, I really thought it was going to be harder. And you know me, I prepare too much. I read all the books. I do all the things you're supposed to do. But I've been genuinely surprised by how natural I feel in the role, and how much I crave it and like just want to. Like we spent all day at the zoo yesterday.
Yeah,
It was the best.
Yeah. Nothing better.
I mean, I just want to get back to theater. I just want to do more plays. I don't have like a type of character or one particular role or anything that's particularly calls to me. I just want to do more plays. And I'm not even all that well read. You know, like I know a lot of people who read all of the plays and all of the screenplays and all this. And I don't know. I'm interested in acting more than literature. I was a math and science geek as a kid, right? That's where I come from, is the problem solving side of it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go like, oh, this text is not a problem, but it's a blueprint that I get to then, you know, extrapolate. So just really, that's it. More theater. I used to sing a lot and I don't do that anymore. That would be a dream come true to like do a Sondheim piece, but I had an opportunity to audition for one this last year and I chickened out. I didn't do it.
You did? You chickened out? Why'd you chicken out?
Because I don't think I'm a strong enough singer right now. It was kind of thing where I was like, I could submit this and be really embarrassed by the quality of work that I submit and therefore never get the opportunity to do it again. Or I could try to recommit myself to getting this skill back in shape and then go for it. But I talked myself out of it.
Yeah, you talked yourself out of that.
One
thing like that's some bullshit there. You could have laid down the tape you ever. I mean, literally, you could have done nothing, and that wouldn't have prohibited you from doing it. Like it would have done.
It's
nothing.
a real worry. It's a real worry for some reason.
Yeah.
But that's something I would like to get. If at some point the time and the energy comes back, I'd like to make that a priority and start feeling confident in that skill again.
Yeah.
Because I do love Sondheim, and I do, you know, I used to love singing and dancing and having that be a part of my world. But then in film and TV, you don't do it very much, so it kind of went to the wayside.
Yeah.
I think because those early years where I wasn't talking and wasn't feeling accepted, and the plays were the only place where I did feel that way, where I felt like, oh, this is something I do well and something that people like me for when I do it. And that was very healing. And I think that I latched onto that pretty hard. I don't know if, I mean, I guess you could call it trauma. I shy away from words like that. Maybe because I feel a need to downplay it. And I guess in a world where like really significant traumas happen, there's a part of me that like is resistant to labeling this the same way. It's deeply affecting and identifying for me. So those are the words I generally like to use. Is that dismissive? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
Pushing
know.
off
This
my
is no. I mean, like, I don't know. It's like.
I mean, even on this podcast, you have people on here who can talk about genuine, life-threatening,
I don't know,
terrifying
man.
things, you know. And
I don't know.
I struggle to place my experiences in the same category.
I don't know. I mean, I think like and you know we're talking about something happened to you at like such a like a ridiculously extraordinarily vulnerable age. It's like the age that you know like my kids are in now, and it's something that just like the goal, just like anything else, is like to talk to the people who are perpetrating, the people who are being victimized by it, and to try to see you know there's not only a way out, but there's a way to kind of like make it you know potentially work for you.
Well, and if anything, I do kind of go like, oh, this is actually a more relatable universal experience. We have all been on one side, if not both of this experience. I am not unique in that regard, and so
and we're like we're in an age right now where like saying something bad about somebody or like writing something bad about somebody is so commonplace, and it's like we can't just, it's like you can't have a conversation about any topic or any person without being completely binary. That's so weird. That's like and I think that just in the same way, it's like it makes you a sheep, like you're just going along, and it's like have thoughts, and like I think to like go into situations kind of with an open heart and an open mind, and be like, oh, who are you? Like, what are you about? And to be curious. I don't know, rather than to judge and close down.
Make it a competition.
You know, I think so. I think so. Well, I'm really happy to see you, and I'm very grateful.
Hey, we actually know each other more now. We'll have lunch. It's okay.
Yeah. Smoke some weed.
Lunch is next.
Yeah.
High lunch
is
next.